So you may have heard of blockchain before, it's obviously been talked, it's like a hot topic now. All that it is, it's just a new way of storing and distributing information. It's not like some brand new concept that we've never really heard before. It's just a new way of storing information and distributing it. And so the main components of a blockchain, this whole blockchain system, is that it's digital, decentralized, and distributed. And I'll touch on those points right now. Actually, it's a blockchain, right? Is a digital ledger. Like, what exactly is a block, right? So a block is just the name that's given to, it's a digital ledger. A ledger is just a transaction journal, right? In accounting, when we do bookkeeping, we keep records of all the transactions, right? And it's so, rather than doing it manually, this is a sort of digital system that's more happens sort of automatically and is powered by computers. So it's just a digital transaction journal, and all transactions in the system are stored in an ongoing chain of these digital ledgers, and they're called blocks, right? So you can see the picture on the screen here, right? You have this block, and then you have this block, and then you have another block, right? So let's look a little bit at that. So the first block in the chain is just called a genesis block. There's nothing different or special about it. It's just the first one in the chain. And each block has a unique fingerprint that identifies it, and that's called a hash. It's just a really long, complicated numbers and letters. And not only does each block have a hash, right? It also has the hash of the predecessor block. And so the hash is how each block is quote unquote chained together, right? So the hash is a super important part of the blocks because it allows for security, a kind of effortless security. So basically, if any data in the blocks are changed, the hash number of the block will also be changed. So it's a great way for fraud prevention. But the main thing is that, blocks, it's really just a digital transaction journal that's connected together by these really long, complicated numbers. And they have lots of security benefits. And yeah, it's actually very, in a way, it's very simple. So the way that a transaction gets into the blockchain is that a transaction is, requested, and then it's authenticated, and then a block is created, and the block is actually sent to every node or participant in the network. So there's 20 of us in here, right? If we're all participating in the, Cointelli blockchain, then when there's a new block created, we automatically all get the newest block that's created. And so not only that, but each node is validating the transaction, and the validators, right? Like we talked about mining or staking, they will receive a reward for their work, typically in the form of a cryptocurrency. Then the block, which has been filled up with the information and validated, right? It's then added onto the chain, the blockchain, and then that update is distributed across the whole network, and that transaction is complete. So with just one transaction, all that is happening, and it happens, because it's powered by computers, it can happen thousands of times, a day or a minute or hour, even depending on the size and scale of the blockchain. And I'll definitely have time for questions. So the next component of a blockchain is that it's decentralized. It's a decentralized network, or you might have heard, peer-to-peer, right? A peer-to-peer network. This is like the quintessential peer-to-peer network is a blockchain. So rather than having some kind of central authority that governs and validates the transactions, it's made possible through algorithms that achieve something called consensus. And consensus is when all the peers in the network are in agreement. And of course, because there's thousands of transactions taking place all the time, it's impossible for us to do this manually. So through creating algorithms and computer power, they've come up with ways to actually validate transactions and blocks and achieve this consensus. And the two ways which we've talked about in the past are mining and staking. Mining is what they call proof of work, and staking is what they call proof of stake. And that just, again, they're different. At the nuts and bolts of it is that they're just different algorithms that work to achieve this consensus in the network, so that the chain can continue on. And just, each blockchain will typically be one or the other. It'll either be, like, for example, Bitcoin is a proof of work blockchain, so their transactions are validated through mining, and Ethereum is a proof of stake blockchain, so their transactions are validated through staking mostly. And so through this way of using algorithms and mining and staking to achieve consensus, this is how the new blocks can be added, transactions can be validated, and this peer-to-peer network can exist and be successful on a scalable level. And then finally, right, it's distributed to everybody involved in the network. So the entire ledger is constantly being distributed to each person's device on the network. And every device that's connected to the network is called a node. Every node, again, gets the same copy of the ledger as everybody else on the network. So this makes it sort of an unhackable system, because there's no central governing authority to hack into. There's only the nodes in this big worldwide network called the blockchain. And so in order to successfully disrupt the network, you would have to do like an insane amount of quantum computing. So it's a very secure network. It allows all the transactions to be anonymous and secure. So, which creates this sort of new system called a trustless system. Trustless means that trust is actually not required. So because it's decentralized and distributed, like I said, it's basically an unhackable system that guarantees transparency, security, and privacy for everybody. Before, whereas, groups of individuals needed to trust each other in order to transact, right? That's a kind of implied. But now this new system enables it so that trust is not really required. People can transact with each other without even knowing who the other person is on the other side. So it kind of represents a major paradigm shift in finance and economics and technology. So it can be applied in many different ways. Like the most basic is, keeping transaction records, supply chain, keeping health records, credential verification, fraud prevention, bookkeeping, accounting, record keeping, and even voting. Does anybody have any questions up until this point, or is anything unclear? I know it's a lot, and it can seem a little bit abstract until you get to really start to utilize the blockchain system. So after this, I'm going to move into cryptocurrency, but this is kind of most of what you'll really need to know as far as what blockchain is and what its use is. All right, so that's everything for today. And if you have any questions, please leave a comment. Thank you.